Hello and welcome to episode 15 of Cold Case Christmas. In this episode, I'm not actually looking at a case that's cold, in my opinion, because a year ago, actually almost a year to the day, 8th of December 2021, news broke that 2 men had been arrested. But we'll get into that. The reason why I want to cover this story is because I've followed it since then 14-year-old Andrew Gosden went missing. Let's get into Andrew's story. Andrew Gosden, who was born on 10th of July 1993, disappeared from central London on the 14th of September 2007 when he was aged 14. He'd drawn £200 from his bank account and bought a one-way ticket to London from his home in Doncaster, which is in South Yorkshire. Sidebar, I lived in South Yorkshire for 2 years when I was a child. Yeah, wrong side of the Pennines, but I came hightailing it all the way back here to Lancashire. So the Gosden family lived happily in Balby, a suburb of Doncaster. His parents were Christians. They weren't extreme, they weren't imposing their views on Andrew or his elder sister. And the most notable thing about Andrew was that he was gifted. He was a gifted student. He was on the Young, Gifted and Talented programme, which was designed to further the educational development of the top 5% of students at school age in the UK. He was expected to score straight A's in his GCSEs. He wanted to be a mathematician and he wanted to go to Cambridge University to study once he left school. That said, he had a neutral attitude towards school. Maybe he found school very easy. He wasn't an unpopular student, but he also didn't need friends. He was somewhat of a loner. So when he disappeared, his parents did think, was he being bullied and they didn't know about it, given that he was so gifted and he was a little bit different than other kids. But Andrew and his sister were very close, and it's believed that Andrew would have told his sister if he'd been bullied. So that theory as to, he's run away because he's being bullied, I don't think really holds much water. Andrew's father described him, for all his intelligence, he had book smarts, but he certainly didn't have street smarts. And he was potentially vulnerable. He was absent-minded. He would think of an idea and go with it. Maybe that was what happened on the 14th of September 2007. Now, during the summer holidays, which in the UK run from the end of July to the beginning of September, during those holidays, Andrew's parents had suggested that he travel to London to stay with a grandmother who lived there. So he had ties in London. He did have family that lived in London. So when he disappeared and it was found that he'd gone to London, the hope was that he'd just turn up at a family member's house. But obviously that didn't happen. So at the time of his disappearance, Andrew was 8 days into the new school year. And in the days leading up to his disappearance, something small but worthy of note was that he changed his routine on a couple of occasions. He chose to walk home, which he normally didn't do. Was that relevant? Did Andrew just fancy a walk? I don't know. But it has been talked about and it is worth noting. Any small thing that's unusual shortly before someone disappears is worth looking into. But his walk home was 4 miles, which would have taken maybe an hour and 20 minutes, walking at just a regular walking pace, rather than taking the bus. But on the evening before his disappearance, it was uneventful. The family ate together, as they normally did. Andrew spent an hour or so making a jigsaw with his dad, watched some comedy programmes on TV, which he enjoyed, and then he went to bed. On the morning of his disappearance, Andrew did appear to be a little bit irritable. He had difficulty waking up, and his mother stated that in itself was unusual. Normally he would get up without any complaint. But a timeline's been put together of Andrew's movements based on surveillance and witness reports. So let's go through that timeline. At 8:05 a.m, Andrew left his house and was witnessed walking across the local park, which was Westfield Park, to his usual bus stop. Family friend Reverend Alan Murray was sitting on a bench in the park and noted that Andrew, instead of taking the bus, he diverted from that route and walked to a cash machine at a local garage. And it's there where he withdrew £200. He actually had £214 in the account, but that ATM machine at the time was only allowing withdrawals in £20 increments. So he couldn't get that last tenner. He wouldn't have got the £4, but he didn't get that last tenner. He was also captured on a neighbour's surveillance camera walking home. Once he was at home, he placed his uniform in the washing machine and his school blazer back on the chair in his room. He changed into casual clothes, and we know what those clothes were. They were a black Slipknot t-shirt, black jeans, and a bag that was embellished with various patches of rock and metal bands. Andrew was into metal music. Slipknot was one of the bands that he liked, and it's notable that a couple of bands were playing in London that night, so hold that thought. He also took his wallet, his keys, his PlayStation Portable, but he didn't take the charger. Now, did he just forget the charger because he was absent-minded like his dad said? Or did he think he didn't need the charger because he'd be home? We don't know. He didn't take anything else. He'd not taken his passport, but it was clear that Andrew had purposefully left the house. What he did was very deliberate. The things he took, he chose deliberately, as well as the charger that he didn't take. He also didn't take a hoodie, a sweatshirt, a coat. He was just walking around with a t-shirt. Was that because he felt warm at that time and didn't realise that by evening it would be cold? Again, was that just Andrew's kind of somewhat impulsive absent-mindedness? Possibly. I would imagine that would be the case. At 8:30 a.m, Andrew departed from his house and he was seen heading down Littlemore Lane towards Westfield Park on that CCTV camera that the neighbour had, so he was walking in the other direction. He walked to Doncaster railway station and bought a one-way ticket to London, which at the time cost £31.40. The ticket seller was interviewed. She said she remembers him. She remembers him distinctly because she asked if he wanted to buy a return, which would just cost 50p or £0.50 more. And he said no. So it looked like Andrew deliberately took a one-way trip. Did that mean he was running away, even though there was nothing wrong at home? It fed into the bullying theory though, but there was nothing wrong at home. But you would think if he was planning to come home that same day, then he would have bought a return, because if he was coming back, he'd have to pay another £31.40 instead of just 50p. I'm wondering though, and I've never found an answer to this, is whether you can only buy day returns on that particular train line. There are some train lines in the UK where you can only buy a return for that day. Let's say, for example, where I live, if I wanted to go into Manchester or Liverpool, I could only buy a day return. So if I plan to come home tomorrow, I'd have to buy a single today and then another single for tomorrow. So I'm wondering whether Andrew thought that that was the case and he was planning on coming home tomorrow. Obviously we don't know, but that's just a thought that I've always had about this. But at 9:35 a.m, Andrew was seen boarding the train to King's Cross Station alone. A woman reports seeing him on the train, so the police did a lot of work investigating this case. They tracked down just about everybody who possibly could have had contact with him. A woman noted seeing him on the train that he was comfortable, he was happy, he was playing on his games console. He arrived at King's Cross Station at 11:20 a.m. He was captured on CCTV leaving the main entrance at 11:25 a.m. So he got off the train, walked along the platform, through the concourse and out into London. It took a while to track down this footage. It took weeks actually to go through all of the station footage. They got him and it's a very clear image of Andrew. So that is the last reported sighting. of Andrew Gosden. Now, why had the school not informed Andrew's parents that he had not arrived at school? Well, that was a mistake. The school secretary responsible for chasing up absent without leave students dialed the number either above or below the Gosden family's number and left a message on the wrong answering machine. So that was really unfortunate, because if the parents had been informed, one of them perhaps could have tracked him down. Would it made a difference? Yeah, probably. The benefit of hindsight is a wonderful thing. It was just an unfortunate mistake, and I bet that school secretary feels absolutely dreadful for that. Only a simple mistake, but that's what happened. And it was only when the family sat down for dinner and shouted for Andrew that they realised he wasn't in the house. Because Andrew, age 14, he'd actually usually go down to the basement to play video games. He had a console down there, he had it all kitted out down there. Or he'd be in his bedroom doing his homework. They didn't think anything of it. But when they realised he was not in the house, they panicked. They phoned round Andrew's friends. And at about 7 p.m, when no one had seen him, no one had heard from him, they called the police. So that's where the investigation began. The work between South Yorkshire Police and the Metropolitan Police in London has been ongoing. The family have been very proactive. Andrew's dad has spoken at lots of events. He's engaged the LGBT community. Another theory was that Andrew was gay. And even though his parents weren't strict Christians, maybe he had got it in his head that they wouldn't have approved, and he's gone to meet someone. That's obviously only a theory, but it's something that Andrew's dad did. There's a lot of eyes on the case over the years, but given the length of time since his disappearance, then we see less and less coverage of Andrew's case. The police looked to a possible digital footprint for Andrew. Now, Andrew didn't own a mobile phone. He didn't want one. He also allegedly didn't use a computer at home. But he did occasionally use his sister's computer, but there was nothing on that. Unless Andrew had been very good at hiding his tracks, there was nothing on that computer. Investigators sent the unique serial number of the PSP, the portable PlayStation, to Sony headquarters, who found that there was no record of an account being set up or communication established on the device. So although the device could connect to the internet, you would need to set up an account to do so, and Andrew hadn't bothered to do that. He had no interest in communicating with other people on the PlayStation. And as I said before, Andrew and his sister were very close, and she said he didn't seem interested in social media or connecting with other people through the internet. He just didn't need it. When he was playing games, he was playing on his own. And the CCTV trail went cold, which is both surprising but not surprising at the same time. London is packed full of CCTV cameras. We in the UK are the most surveilled country in the entirety of Europe, and London is heavily surveilled, but maybe not quite in such a sophisticated way as it is today. Why he wasn't, it could simply be that he was missed, because London is hugely busy. Like King's Cross is a really busy area of London. He could easily have been missed. Could it be that Andrew was going to see a band, and either he didn't make it there, or he made it to the band and then was maybe planning to go to his grandmother's house and return to Doncaster tomorrow? The idea being that his parents would have said no, he can't travel to London alone to watch a band. He travelled to London alone to visit his grandmother, but not to watch a band. That's far more risky. Navigating London at night, very risky. I think this is quite possible, given that I was 14 once and I used to do this kind of thing. You do it and then you ask for forgiveness later. And I wonder whether that's what Andrew did and didn't really think it through. But he knew his grandmother and his other family members would maybe take him in for the night, he'd have a bed, and then he'd go back in the morning to Doncaster, grovel to his parents and, ask for forgiveness. But something went wrong. Something went very wrong in this case. Now, over the years, there's been various sightings, none of which have borne out. There was a strange kind of internet presence at one point called Andy Roo that they thought could be Andrew. But on 11th of January this year, 2022, South Yorkshire Police released that on December the 8th, 2021, they arrested a 45-year-old man and a 38-year-old man on suspicion of kidnap and human trafficking. The 45-year-old man, additionally, was arrested for the possession of indecent images of children. And this was linked to Andrew's case. However, they didn't have enough to detain them, and they were released under investigation while inquiries continued. So, back in January, Andrew's family said that they didn't know what to think about this new development. You know, if he'd been sold into human trafficking, was he still alive somewhere? He'd be 29 now. Would he be out of a trafficking situation and have made a life somewhere else, maybe too ashamed to go home? But his dad, Kevin, said that it had been hard on the family because of the arrest made by the police, which he said worried them because, other than being told that 2 people had been arrested, they'd been given no more information. Even the family couldn't be given any information about it because this was a very active investigation. Maybe it involved a trafficking ring, I don't know. But the last media I can find on this was from September of this year. And Kevin said, in addition, the idea that 2 people have been on bail has weighted on us because we have had no update on that since January. And that has always been on the back of our minds. I bet it has. So, could one day this case be solved? I think possibly. Would it ever bring Andrew home? Maybe not, but it might give the family some answers as to what happened to Andrew Gosden on or around the 14th of September 2007. But let me know what you think about this case. What do you think happened to Andrew Gosden? I think this case will one day be solved, and it definitely isn't cold. But bye for now. I'll see you very soon in the next episode of Cold Case Christmas.